ANWEN thumped the circulation back into her legs. Sitting in the quiet glen didn't seem to do much. She was no closer to understanding what her mother meant than she had been hours before. She wasn't even sure how to go about figuring things out. Listening for all she was worth was not working. It was possible she was trying too hard, she reasoned.
Maybe you should just try standing on your head.
Daphne snickered in her mind.
At least you'd be doing something productive. Of course, I really don't mind if you don't succeed. It's no skin off my back. I mean, you are just going to lose anyway.
ANWEN rolled her eyes.
I thought I told you to be quiet.
She retorted.
How can I hear anything if you're always buzzing around my head?
Her stomach rumbled, reminding her she hadn't eaten anything in quite some time. With a sigh, she opened her canteen and took a sip. The way things were looking, she wouldn't get the chance to have a decent meal anytime soon either.
You'd be better to focus on your own needs,
Daphne pointed out.
I'm sure you could find an edible plant or two. That way your infernal stomach would finally shut up. It's annoying.
ANWEN clenched her fists.
No. Mom told me to stay here. I'm not going to disobey her. I already told you that.
Daphne just laughed.
And what will you do when you are so faint with hunger you can't even move? Or when there's no water left in your precious canteen? You know it will happen sooner than later. You're already more than halfway there. Will you continue to be stubborn and starve yourself to complete this impossible task? If you're that determined, I can just show you what you need to know.
ANWEN resettled herself, canteen between her legs. She tried to be careful about how much she drank, but knew Daphne was right. She would run out of water before too long. Combine that with her not having eaten anything in who knew how many days, things did not look good.
No thanks,
she told the ghost in her mind. Daphne shrugged shadowy shoulders.
We'll see. Just wait until the hunger and thirst really register in your pathetic little brain. Then you'll change your mind.
Joseph stumbled over rubble in the small alley leading back to the main courtyard of the ruined city.
Stupid mages,
he cursed.
You'd think they'd be more interested in finding one of their own. Instead, they waste their time trying to break into some forsaken fortress.
He kicked at a loose stone for good measure. The ruined amphitheater left much to be desired. There were just too many broken stones and pillars to do an effective search without any help. He did his best, though, despite his limitations. In the end, he had little to show for his efforts. Finding nothing there, he'd gone back to the buildings in the secondary courtyard. He took his time looking into every last one of them. He even went so far as to look in the little out-of-the-way corner where he and Daphne had made out only a few weeks before. Nothing. But she couldn't have just vanished into thin air, he reasoned. Unless those people the mages wanted had killed her. If that was the case, he'd have his revenge. Finding nothing but more mages in the central courtyard, he abandoned his search of the city. He decided to head back down the trail instead. Maybe there would be some clues there. Courtney wiped sweat from her face as she leaned against a convenient tree. Margot's training was hard, a lot harder than she'd anticipated. She found herself wondering just how the woman had so much stamina. She looked like a weakling some punk could take out in a heartbeat, and yet she seemed able to bulldoze down any obstacle in her way.
Not bad,
Margot commented.
Your strokes are becoming more sure, but you keep dropping your guard. That's a luxury you can't afford in battle. The others will take advantage of that and cut you into bits.
The older woman stood at ease, an elongated branch in her hands. It wasn't as deadly as a bone knife, but was a useful training tool. She took a moment to examine the smooth bark. She even checked it for any notches the girl might have inflicted in their mock battle. Courtney had managed to get in a few good hits with her own wooden weapon. She'd received much more in return, and Margot felt sure the girl was feeling it.
Okay, let's take a 5-minute break and then get back to work,
Margot announced. Courtney was too tired to argue. She never had such a workout in her life, unless she counted her fight with Daphne's manticore. That, of course, had been more of a life-or-death situation, with her adrenaline pumping. Now, the work felt more grueling and twice as exhausting. She reached for her canteen and took a quick swig. It was good to stay hydrated, but she didn't want to overdo it. Margot pulled out her own canteen.
I suppose now is as good a time as any to give you my thanks.
She commented. Courtney looked up in surprise.
For what?
She cradled her water container between her knees as she slid down to the ground in relief. Taking a sip from her water, Margot looked around the clearing they were using as a practice ring.
For protecting my daughter. I didn't thank you before.
Courtney brushed that aside.
I should be thanking you for how she was brought up. She saved me from my own vanity. If it weren't for her, I'd still be trying to catch every boy I met, and in the most pitiful manner. She showed me how shallow I was. And because of that, I decided I want to become something more. To do something meaningful with my life.
Margot smiled.
One of her many gifts.
She commented.
Perhaps that's part of why Kern thinks her special. She's not a fighter. Despite that, she has the ability to inspire and put into effect change in a non-threatening way. A natural leader, if you'd like.
Courtney nodded, though she wasn't sure about the leader part. Tyler had done more leading than either combined. But then again, Tyler was a dragon, and apparently an important one at that. Leading was as natural to him as breathing.
Okay, back to work.
Margot interrupted her thoughts.
We still have a few hours left before nightfall, and I want to ingrain those lessons into your muscles. You can't afford to forget them in battle.
With a groan, Courtney moved back into the meadow, wondering what the Master Mage had in mind for the rest of the afternoon. Tyler emerged from his tent just after dark, followed closely by Walter. Firelight flickered off the tent wall from the fire pit.
Looks like they've turned in early,
He commented, noting the empty area. You could hear the sounds of 2 people breathing from the girl's tent. And if he really focused, he could faintly hear ANWEN's breathing as well, even though she was some ways away. Walter nodded. Though they'd already agreed to go after more supplies, he felt like sneaking around. Maybe it was the need for practice and stealth. He wasn't sure. Or maybe it was because he felt like he was in a place he didn't really belong. Either way, he moved with discretion as he followed Tyler down to the lake's shore. Tyler pulled the thin frame of the boat towards the water, deciding the large boat would be too much for just the 2 of them to handle. Tyler coaxed the wood to a more compact size.
We're good to go.
He announced as he slid the small canoe-like craft into the water. Walter grabbed 2 of the oars and stepped into the boat. He then distributed his weight to make sure it didn't capsize.
Yep. We're gonna need a bigger boat for the return trip.
He observed.
One that's a lot sturdier than this one. One canister of ammunition could sink it faster than a torpedo pleasure boat.
Tyler nodded as he situated himself behind Walter.
We can worry about that once we get back to the mainland.
Taking up a paddle, he pushed the boat away from the bank, sending them smoothly across the water.